already know what Viking we gon' have. ECSU, on you haters we go bam. We aim for higher achievements, whipping at you haters. Headed to the future, so I see you later. I'm a mighty, mighty Viking from Viking town. It takes a mighty, mighty Viking to knock me down. If you don't like my apples, don't shake my tree. I'm a mighty, mighty Viking, don't mess with me.
With weekly rotating hosts and show topics, the Big E University Show will showcase academics, athletic, artistic interests, and talents of the Viking community. The purpose of the Big E Show is to entertain and enlighten students here on campus while giving them the opportunity to actively participate in the production of the program. Welcome to the Big E University. I'm telling you to enjoy these fun facts. Yeah.
For the 2016 presidential elections, the candidates are very strange. My most favorite candidate for 2016 elections will be Bernie Sanders. And the reason why is because he was there for the civil rights movement. My least favorite will be Donald Trump because, well, he's a bigot.
We have the 2008 Stump the Vote video from the Deltas.
How do you think the election will affect society after the voting is done?
Well, after the next president is elected, I feel that he will make the decisions about economy, gas, war, determine if we end this war on time or if we increase gas prices.
I believe that the person that I'm voting for will have a positive impact on the economy, job employment, gas prices, and I believe that everything will be lowered and everything will improve as far as school systems and healthcare.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We're in front of Williams Hall with the lovely Deltas.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jay Butters. We're outside Elizabeth City State Campus right now. We're actually outside the Stump the Vote concert right now. We have sitting here with a few young students right here at the campus. You guys getting out to vote today?
Yeah!
Everybody's going out to vote. Time for a change, right?
It's definitely
Time for a change, all right.
Dreaming an American's dream. They jealous cause Americans dream. And we still pray for them even though they trying to bring America to its knees. Salute to the soldiers, take the pain for us. For the forefathers who built this place for us. Overseas warriors, United States martyrs. This is for the men that change, listen to the chorus.
I have a dream that one day down in Alabama with its vicious racism, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of imposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
I pledge allegiance, America, they respect us. Stand together forever as we direct the new world order. They crossing over the borders. According to news reporters, Americanized soldiers are fighting for one another for wars, foreclosure. So who's a true supporter? You ought to be ashamed if you're killing for quarters. We sorta find a way to justify slaughter when men are out there dying for hours by hour just to know their sons are growing up to be fathers. God bless America.
I hope you guys enjoyed these fun facts.
Another reason for me voting for Bernie Sanders is his efforts for promoting college education.
I support Bernie Sanders because he put himself in other people's shoes, such as college students. He planned to reduce college debts. Welcome back to the Big E University. The next video will be the announcement of Obama winning the 2008 election.
It is my great personal honor to present the 44th President of these United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you. My fellow citizens, I stand here today humbled by the task before us, grateful for the trust you've bestowed, mindful of the sacrifices borne by our ancestors. I thank President Bush for his service to our nation. As well as the generosity and cooperation he has shown throughout this transition. 44 Americans have now taken the presidential oath. The words have been spoken during rising tides of prosperity and the still waters of peace. Yet, every so often, the oath is taken amidst gathering clouds and raging storms. At these moments, America has carried on not simply because of the skill or vision of those in high office, but because we, the people, have remained faithful to the ideals of our forebears and true to our founding documents. So it has been, so it must be with this generation of Americans. That we are in the midst of crisis is now well understood. Our nation is at war against a far-reaching network of violence and hatred. Our economy is badly weakened, a consequence of greed and irresponsibility on the part of some. But all.
I hope you guys enjoyed these fun facts.
So far for the 2016 presidential election, Donald Trump has run 7 states. My question is, what did that say about America? My viewpoint of Donald Trump is the fact that what angers me is he was going to spend money, instead of focus on college education, he'd rather focus on building a wall to keep minorities out of America. Again, what did that say about America?
Donald Trump wants to build a wall for minorities. That's enough said. Welcome back to the Big E University. The next video will be a production from ECSU on Montravius King.
At 22 years old, Elizabeth City State senior Montravius King became the youngest elected official in the state of North Carolina. This is his journey from wide-eyed freshman to national political figure.
My godmother is a 1972 graduate of Elizabeth City State University. She told me, she said, Montravius, you can apply to whatever college or university you want to, but you're coming to Elizabeth City State University. Ileana Thomas was SGA president when I came here. I said to myself, I want to be the SGA president my senior year. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work hard to become the SGA president. In between my sophomore and junior years, I really started to become more active politically and in the NAACP. And, you know, I noticed that the NAACP on campus was kind of struggling. So they needed leadership. And I joined the NAACP chapter here, ran for president, and I became the president of the college chapter here in Elizabeth City. And I strengthened that chapter. And the NAACP college chapter became the largest college chapter in the state of North Carolina, in the whole entire state. And we did a lot of things. We spoke out against tuition increases. We provided seminars for AIDS awareness, and that's really when I really began to be more involved in the larger Elizabeth City community.
Getting elected to city council wasn't easy. Montravius's residential status was challenged, and he had to fight just to get onto the ballot. Giving up, not an option.
I realized it was something greater than myself. I didn't know it when I filed for election and signed those papers. I didn't realize that I would become the poster child of this movement in North Carolina. I didn't realize that my election, what it would do for ECSU. So I said to myself, I can't give up. Because if I give up, they're going to say, well, yeah, he was that was the ECSU student that gave up. But now they can say that was the ECSU student that won.
I hope you guys enjoyed these fun facts.
...2016 presidential election candidate, Donald Trump. My comments on it? Nothing. Nothing positive. Nothing positive at all. Oh no, you recorded this. Oh my gosh, no, don't record that.
Another reason I want to vote for Bernie Sanders is because he walked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Welcome back to the Big E University. The next video will be Rachel Maddow speaking on Montravius King's situation.
This is where the hearing was held, where they challenged Montravius's residency for whether he could run.
This is also where the April challenges against ECSU students were held. One of the first things you noticed about the room was that it was divided along black and white lines. Part of that is local personalities, of course, people just not getting along with each other. But it was a very stark thing that people noticed.
Just people white people sat on one side, black people sat on the other?
Yeah. Mr. Gilbert does have some black supporters in the community, but this is still an issue that's been triggering a lot of racial tension in the community. Usually they're pretty humdrum, boring meetings, as you might expect. But of course, they've been garnering a lot more interest as of late. I'm going to try and make sure to go to all of them from now on.
Please do.
Yeah.
Please do. We're counting on it. The grounds on which this seems like a important national story and not just a fascinating local drama is the extent to which this could be a precedent. I mean, if at the Board of Elections level here in Elizabeth City, they're saying, you know what, if you live on campus, you don't live here. You don't live in this town. You may be at Elizabeth City State University, but you are not in Elizabeth City for the purpose of voting. If that is not just alleged, but confirmed by the Board of Elections, and indeed, if that is confirmed by the State Board of Elections, which they're appealing to, that has the effect, that would have the effect, if it's precedent, of saying that no full-time student living on campus anywhere in North Carolina has the right to vote there.
That would certainly set up the argument. To be clear with Mr. King's case, his candidacy was the only issue explicitly debated Tuesday.
But the criteria for being allowed to get your name on the ballot to run and the criteria to vote are the same criteria.
Yes, so it could set up the precedent. It just seems logical if you accept that, well, dormitory is inherently temporary for candidacy purposes. They would also be inherently temporary for voting purposes.
The Republican activists and local officials here, Mr. Gilbert in particular, who have pushed this challenge against Montravius running for office, they've been pretty explicit, haven't they, that they plan to use the same tactic to challenge not just people's right to run for office, but people's right to vote, students' right to vote.
Mr. Gilbert has been somewhat reluctant to really detail what he wants to do going forward. He did, of course, tell the Associated Press, I want to take my show on the road. In subsequent interviews, I asked, does that mean seminars? Do you coach other county boards? What happens from here? And he hasn't really gotten into that question. And the level of scrutiny this is drawing is something that I think would be fair to say is surprising to him. But it's only logical that this precedent would spread if it is upheld.
If, and That's what makes it a big deal. That's what makes this a big deal story. If that precedent was set, if what happened here in this room stands at the state level, the precedent is set that any full-time student in North Carolina can't vote at school.
It would certainly seem that way. It's my understanding that the state board has not yet set a hearing date for Mr. King's case.
Yeah.
They don't have to set a firm date, as best I understand it, according to state law, but they, of course, are strongly encouraged to expedite the matter. That's according to one of his attorneys with the Southern Coalition.
Well, tick, tick, tick. I mean, it's not too long before the elections are going to happen, so they got to make a decision.
Yeah, our elections board director has said he'll hold off printing the ballots as long as he can.
Wow.
To make sure that there's some sort of resolution to this. But obviously, it's kind of hard for Mr. King to run for office and defend this at the same time. So bringing finality to this soon would be an important thing.
Absolutely. Well, John Hawley with the Daily Advance, thank you. I really appreciate this chance to talk to you about this, and your reporting really has been indispensable. I will say, wherever you are, anywhere in the country, you have a local newspaper, and you've been really annoyed when you've been going to their website and realizing that everything's behind a paywall now. It's because they need your money, and you should subscribe to them. Seriously. For me, in Northampton, Massachusetts, it's the Daily Hampshire Gazette. GazetteNet.com. I pay to get behind the paywall. You should pay for your local paper. So guys like John can report on important stuff that happens in boring rooms like this. Seriously. Do it.
I hope you guys enjoyed these fun facts.
Okay. The reason I am voting is because I pretty much follow leading by example. My parents has always taught me to vote, so I'm voting just like my parents have done, to voice my opinion, and also for me to have a chance to promote a chance for Bernie Sanders a winning chance in elections.
Just because Hillary Clinton is a woman, I will not vote for her based off her gender. It will be because of her ideas and what she presents to solve the world problems.
Welcome back to
the Big E University. The next video will be Rachel Maddow interviewing Montravious King.
I can tell that you have the appetite for the fight. I cannot tell from talking to you whether you are just spinning me by saying that you think you're going to win. Is that just yeah, I'm confident. But really, do you think you're going to win?
I'm completely, I'm absolutely optimistically sure that I'm going to win.
The local board, the local board is against you. Mm-hmm. The state board is Republican controlled. That's right. Appointed by the governor, who just rolled back voting rights further than any other state in the country since the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. Mm-hmm. Everything's stacked against you, and you're like, I'm going to win.
Oh, yeah. I'm completely sure. And not only do I know that the students are behind me and support me, but I believe that a large number of people in the Fourth Ward are going to vote for me. I'm really sure about that.
You are a man of great optimism.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, the deck is really stacked against you. And there's Montravious King, man of great optimism.
I hope you guys enjoyed these fun facts. I hope you guys enjoyed these fun facts. Welcome back to the Big E University. The next video will be Rachel Maddow's show discussing the history of college students voting.
This weekend in Ohio, they mark the anniversary of this spring day at Kent State University in 1970, when National Guard troops opened fire on American students who were protesting against the Vietnam War. The American military is not supposed to fire on American civilians this way, but they did. They killed 4 students. They injured 9. The students had gathered to express their political position against the Vietnam War. They wanted to be heard in that political debate, even though many of them were not yet old enough to vote. In 1970, the year of the Kent State shootings, the voting age in this country was still 21. So if you were 18 or if you were 19 or if you were 20, you could get drafted into war. You stood a good chance of getting forced into service in the Vietnam War. But even so, at 18 or 19 or 20, you could not vote for or against the politicians who would send you to that war. You were old enough to fight, but not old enough to vote. That situation seemed unfair enough to enough people that the country voted to change that idea. Students marched for the right to vote. They marched and lobbied and pushed and organized to lower the voting age to 18, to the same age at which you could be drafted. And the students got what they wanted. They got a voice in the process in the form of a new amendment to the United States Constitution. President Richard Nixon signed it over the July 4th holiday in 1971.
It seems to me that it is particularly appropriate that on this same day, we are certifying the 26th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. That amendment, as you know, provides for the right to vote of all of our young people between 18 and 21. 11 million new voters as a result of this amendment.
11 million new voters. 11 million new voters who were suddenly eligible both to serve their country in the military and to have a say in how their country was run. That idea was not universally celebrated in this country. In college towns from Lexington, Kentucky to Middlebury, Vermont, they sued to try to stop the local students from voting. They sued in New Jersey and Mississippi and Pennsylvania and Texas. They sued in Michigan. This was not a regional thing. It happened almost everywhere. And almost everywhere, the courts found that if anybody over age 18 could vote and vote where they lived, well, that applied to college students too. College students over the age of 18 have a constitutional right to register and vote from where they are living to go to school. When one of those lawsuits ended up at the California Supreme Court, the court wrote these few lines of emphatic poetry, basically, in taking the voting rights side. Quote, America's youth entreated, pleaded for, demanded a voice in the governance of this nation. On campuses by the hundreds, at Lincoln's monument by the hundreds of thousands, they voiced their frustration at their electoral impotence and their love of a country which they believed to be abandoning its ideals. Many more worked quietly and effectively within a system that gave them scant recognition. And in the land of Vietnam, they lie as proof that death accords youth no protected status. Their struggle for recognition divided a nation against itself. Congress and more than 3/4 of the states have now determined in their wisdom that youth shall have a new birth of freedom. The franchise, rights won at the cost of so much individual and social suffering, may not and shall not be curtailed on the basis of hoary fictions that these men and women are children tied to residential apron strings. Dang. In other words, students can vote where they go to college. Settled. Ba-dum-bum. But the holdout of all holdouts, the place where they dug in harder than anywhere else to try to make that not so, was this place, Waller County, Texas. Waller County is not all that far from Houston, but it is a relatively rural county, only about 40,000 people. It also has one university called Prairie View A&M. Prairie View is a historically black university. It was founded after the Civil War on old plantation land. Today, Prairie View has several thousand students. Most but not all of them are African American. The school graduates a lot of engineers, nurses, teachers. Through its ROTC program, it graduates a lot of Army officers. The deputy commander for Desert Storm graduated from Prairie View. Prairie View is also known for its band, the famous Marching Storm. Look how good they are. If you are within reaching distance of Waller County, Texas at homecoming this fall, all the tape I looked at today tells me that you should go. Their band is really, really good. We know from the historical record that Prairie View students, the ones who were old enough, began trying to register to vote in 1966. That was the year after Congress passed the Voting Rights Act. And we know from the historical record that the local registrar of voters didn't much like the idea. Started forcing these new would-be voters, people he said he did not know, to take extra steps and jump through extra hoops in order to be registered to vote. When the voting age was then lowered to 18 and more Prairie View students started trying to register to vote, that local registrar typed up a questionnaire for the new people, the people he said he did not know and who did not own property in the county. He'd ask them, are you a college student? What do you plan to do when you finish your college education? Do you belong to a church, club, or some Waller County organization other than college related? If you went to Prairie View and you wanted to vote there, you went to this one registrar and you answered the questions and you waited for his answer. The caption on this old clipping says that this is the registrar, Leroy Sim, coming to give students his questionnaire to, quote, determine whether they meet requirements for voting. That determination, according to Leroy Sim, was almost always no. And so the students at historically black Prairie View A&M in Waller County, Texas, did not get to vote at their school in the 1972 presidential elections, like the rest of the students in America did. Over the next few years, a court would tell Leroy Sim to let the students vote. Election officials in Texas made several trips to Prairie View trying to help the students vote. The Texas legislature passed a law telling that registrar to let the students there vote. But Leroy Sim in Waller County, Texas would not budge. Not for those people he didn't consider part of his community, who he didn't think ought to be allowed to vote there. Well, in the next big national election in 1976, this particular Prairie View A&M student, a man named Sidney Hicks, he took part in a voter registration drive. This is him holding the county's questionnaire. Court papers show that the Prairie View students sent in several hundred applications to vote, maybe more than 1,000. At most, 3 dozen got through. That same year, Sidney Hicks ran for city council in Prairie View, and he won. But he was still not allowed to vote in the town. When we spoke with Mr. Hicks today, he told us this. He said, all we wanted was a part of the American dream, that all citizens have the right to vote. The year Sidney Hicks could not vote there, the federal government sued on behalf of the students at Prairie View. Leroy Sim fought them in court after court until finally, in 1979, in January 1979, the United States Supreme Court issued a one-sentence ruling for the Prairie View students. The Supreme Court said unequivocally that students have the right to vote at their college, whether that college is historically black Prairie View A&M or Harvard or anywhere else. The Supreme Court settled that question overtly and succinctly. The right of students to vote where they go to college is an overtly, uncomplicatedly settled matter of law in this country. But something has happened in the last couple of years in which elected Republicans around the country, again, not regionally specific, but around the country, Republicans in the last couple of years have decided that they just cannot abide this piece of settled law. Forget the Supreme Court. They are back to desperate on this issue. And if you want to know why, every few days now you're hearing about more people being arrested doing civil disobedience in North Carolina, dozens more people arrested just today. If you want to know part of the reason why, it's because what is happening to voting rights in North Carolina, along with a lot of other things going on in North Carolina. One of the Republican bills that's up in that state right now would try to make students stop being able to vote where they go to college by raising taxes. It would raise your parents' taxes, punish your parents with a tax hike if you, as a student, registered to vote at your college. But it's not just in North Carolina. The chairman of the Republican Party in Maine threatened several hundred college students for trying to vote back in 2011. In 2012, in New Hampshire, Republicans tried to block students from voting there. After the election, a Republican in Indiana proposed banning any student from voting if they paid out-of-state tuition. She did eventually give that up after the college Republicans pointed out that her bill would violate students' constitutional rights. Now in Ohio, Republicans there have proposed punishing universities for helping students vote. They would block schools from charging student voters out-of-state tuition. Ohio's public colleges say this would cost the schools hundreds of millions of dollars every year. That bill passed the Ohio House, and it is on to the Republicans in the Senate. There is an underappreciated radicalism that's at work here, and also a willingness to refight very much settled fights. This is a settled matter, but Republicans right now are relitigating it anyway, pushing laws that are straight out of 1970s Waller County, Texas. But it is no mystery why Republicans are so desperate to go there, even though this ought to be a settled matter. These are the results by precinct from Ohio State last year. It was a sweep for Barack Obama in a big way. It was also a sweep for Barack Obama last year at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Look at those margins. Nearly a sweep at the University of Indiana. Students tend to vote Democratic, and everybody knows it. Yet we have still this stubborn idea in our country that voting itself is a good thing without regard for how you vote. You could hear that yesterday in the remarks that President Obama made at Ohio State's graduation when he quoted, of all people, President Bush.
I'm not going to get partisan either, because that's not what citizenship is about. In fact, I'm asking the same thing of you that President Bush did when he spoke at this commencement in 2002. America needs more than taxpayers, spectators, and occasional voters, he said. America needs full-time citizens.
America needs full-time citizens. We used to have a national consensus on that. I am not convinced that we still do.
Welcome back to the Big E University. The next video will be the MSNBC coming to ECSU.
And that is why we are here. That is why we are here in beautiful Elizabeth City, North Carolina right now. The gateway to the Outer Banks, tucked up into the northeastern corner of the state. Because here, it is clear as day. Here it is starting in some ways. And here it is a tale of two schools. I spent most of the day today at Elizabeth City State University, where they have 2,500 students, give or take. Elizabeth City State is a historically black college. It's still mostly African American. The university, named after Elizabeth City, is a big part of this relatively small town. But Elizabeth City does have another four-year school here. The other one is called Mid-Atlantic Christian University. It used to be called Roanoke Bible. It's a much smaller school. It's private, religious. It's mostly a white school. Like the historically black school across town, Mid-Atlantic Christian is a very civic-minded place. Every year they hold a voter registration drive so students can register to vote from school. Then the school shuttles them downtown to their polling places. It's a priority for the school. They take it seriously.
I think it's important for us to be involved with our local community as well as national issues. When we have presidential elections, we're responsible as citizens to be a part of what's going on in the world around us.
In his 7 years at Mid-Atlantic Christian, Vice President Ken Green says he has never known a student to have a problem in registering to vote or in voting from the school. It's just not a problem at Mid-Atlantic Christian. But over across town at Elizabeth City State, students who try to vote from that school, they have been running into problems, and kind of big ones. In 2007, a local Republican challenged the voting rights of 18 students at Elizabeth City State, at the historically black college. He said they didn't really live at the school. All of those challenges failed. Then in November 2012, 4 students who voted in that election got their votes challenged too. Then a few months later, in April 2013, there were so many challenges to Elizabeth City State voters that the hearing lasted for hours. They challenged 60 voters that day, almost all of them students at this mostly black college. 56 students had their names struck from the voting rolls in that round. And, you know, you might say, why is this one school getting all these challenges while the other school in town says, no problem. We're voting, we're never getting challenged, and it's all okay. Is it because one school is mostly black and the other one is mostly white? Is it because one school is bigger? Or because one school is more conservative? Or is it just because of this guy? All of those challenges to the student voters at the local historically black college were brought by one guy. His name is Pete Gilbert. He's the one who's on the right. There he is, sitting at the table here. He's going through students' names, student name after student name. If you have been registered to vote as an Elizabeth City State University student in recent years, then an encounter with Pete Gilbert has been a very real possibility for you. Mr. Gilbert is the chairman of the local county Republican Party. He lives in the same city ward that includes this historically black, mostly African American school. He says he challenges voters from that school specifically because that is his home precinct. Elizabeth City State is on his turf. In North Carolina, as that local Republican has been trying to kick students off the rolls, he's relied on part of the law that lets you challenge people who vote in the same precinct as yours. The law also would have allowed him to challenge the student voters at the other school, at the mostly white school across town, just not during an election. If he'd wanted to make a big deal out of questioning the Christian school student voters too, he very easily could have done that. But he just didn't. The county Republican chairman has stayed focused on his own turf and on the black school in town. But whatever choices Pete Gilbert made as he went along, for whatever reasons he made them, his turf now has just gotten much, much bigger. He is now challenging the right of this Elizabeth City State student to run for city council. He says because Montravius King's a student, he can't really live in Elizabeth City, so he can't really run for office here. This new challenge happened this month here at this spot, the County Board of Elections. Actually, it happened right here in this exact room. White people sat on one side, black people sat on the other.
Yeah, Mr. Gilbert does have some black supporters in the community, but this is still an issue that's been triggering a lot of racial tension in the community. If I could, just the way it played out over the better part of 6 or 7 hours is Mr. King and his attorney were here. Mr. Gilbert was there with his supporters, including Mrs. Myrick, who was a silent observer during the hearing. She
Who's
said,
Mrs. Myrick?
With the Civitas Institute.
Okay, which is a conservative think tank.
Yes, they said her presence was for her personal edification. I have nothing to refute that one way or another.
But she sat with Mr. Gilbert, the Republican Party chairman, when he was issuing the challenge, essentially.
Yeah, he's had a lot of practice at this. The challenges were basically the same sort of arguments that he's been using over the last couple of years. So he certainly didn't need her assistance for this.
This is a really interesting detail. The woman from Art Pope's think tank, the Civitas Institute, was in town that day here in Elizabeth City as a silent observer to the challenge of this student to be able to run for office here. What was she there to see? She was not there to help. The local Republican Party chairman knows how to make these challenges. He's been doing it for years. He doesn't need any help from anybody. She's not there to help. She's there to learn. She's there to see how this is done, how this might be done in the rest of the state. Because this is what she saw that day. Across North Carolina, Republicans have just gained control of all the boards of elections for the first time in 20 years. The big state elections board, all the little county boards, the Republicans now control all of them because there's a Republican who holds the governorship. The new Republican majority on the local board here, in this case, didn't question whether Montravius King has lived at school for 4 years. That was not the issue. What they questioned was whether living at school is enough to make you a resident, and they said it is not. And in making that decision, they accepted a legal framework for disqualifying students from voting in local elections. That's how reporter John Hawley put it. He's talking there about students at the black school in Elizabeth City. And this development could very well affect every student voter, every college in the state. If Montravius King thought it would be hard enough running for local office, imagine what the pressure is like now that he has to win this case or be the precedent. I mean, if residency challenges are successful against you, there's no reason why the exact same residency challenge wouldn't be successful against every on-campus student at every college in North Carolina. If you lose this case, it's going to be a big deal.
It really is.
No pressure.
It really is. Yeah.
No pressure. Also merging while we're having this conversation. The pressure is on in North Carolina for real. We spoke with Pete Gilbert this week, the Republican county chairman here. We asked him to sit down with us for an interview. He did not want to talk to us. But what we wanted to know is whether he still intends to take this show on the road, as he has said, about challenging student voting rights across North Carolina now that his plans are receiving so much national attention. Does he still want to take this show on the road and do this all across the state? He tells us he's waiting for Montravius King's appeal to the State Board of Elections. At the State Board of Elections, the new Republican chair there is urging the newly Republican local boards to cool it, try to get along with everybody. But he also says they're independent and they are appointed by the governor and then left to fly. And if the county Republican chairman, if the Pete Gilberts of the state decide to go for it, North Carolina Republicans have made that much, much easier. Under North Carolina's old elections law, you could only challenge a voter's eligibility to vote. You could only challenge somebody's residency, their registration, if that person lived in your same county. Under the new law signed by Governor McCrory this month, any voter anywhere in the state can go anywhere in the state and challenge the registration of any other voter. You want to block all the students from voting at your local historically black college? Or the college where maybe they just vote too liberal? Give it a go. The field is now wide open. Give it a try. It worked here. At least it's worked here so far. Supporters of voting rights are now suing in federal court over that part of the new law. But the other defense of voting rights is just beginning to happen right here in Elizabeth City, and that is what we came here today to see.
I've learned one thing, but the bravery and the foolishness of youth is not something to be toyed with.
Welcome back to the Big E University. This next video was produced by the NAACP on Montravius King winning a chance to run for city council.
In terms of his intention to make his present residence his permanent home, again, he registered and voted in Elizabeth City. He has a job that's independent of student status, universal protection security. And we have proof of that. He volunteers at local organizations, Food Bank of Albemarle, Boys and Girls Club, the H&L Trigg School. This is on page 10 of the transcript. You know, he was active in 3 local political campaigns, I believe. He was supporting a campaign twice for mayor and one for district judge. How much more skin in the game can you have? I wish all of our people were this involved in the community. I think he has absolutely shown he's a resident there.
We need to look at the totality of the circumstances and everything that's been produced here in the record and today. And I would just like to let you all know this hearing is a serious matter, and what the folks do at the county levels when they have a hearing, it should be taken seriously. Candidate challenges are, again, extremely serious, and the testimony, in my judgment, reflected flippancy and a lack of respect for the local Board of Elections. And I just would say that cooperation and respect are due to those folks. They are volunteers in most counties. I know folks do not get paid for this service. And I just would expect Mr. King, council, and all petitioners going forward that you would show respect to your county boards.
This case and the specific facts of this case are extremely difficult to apply to the applicable law. I think there's a lot of different case law going on, and the specific facts of this case are you know, they present a lot of troubling things on both sides. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the board rules on this. I think I'm ready to vote, and I did want to say that Mr. King's right to vote has never been challenged.
I am troubled by the order. I'm troubled by the testimony that I heard today from the chairman, to be very direct. I am troubled when I look at the order and I look at the rationale for the order. In your own words, Ms. Godfrey and the other board member, that just doesn't match up with what the law requires. I'm ready to vote as well.
I have concerns about the order as well. There was substantial discussion in the record about permanency, and I know Mr. Gilbert has already recognized today that perhaps saying permanent residence or permanent domicile means 365 days is not what an argument he would wish to pursue. I think that is certainly contrary to the law. I am also concerned about an analogy that was repeatedly made, in a fair and true analogy. While this is a student challenge, the housing of students is not dissimilar to those of the military. And in a state full of military service members, we need to be particularly aware of the fact that the right to vote and the right to run for office is protected by them first. And a rule here that because you couldn't be in the room all year round means you can't run for office would stand to abridge the rights of the military as well, and I won't tolerate that. So where that analogy is fairly fitting, I'm inclined to allow Mr. King to run because it would appear that under a de novo review of the whole record, which is the standard we are supposed to apply, he just carried his burden to prove that he had the intent to embed himself in the 4th Ward of Elizabeth City as a valid candidate there. Mr. Malcolm, do I hear a motion to reverse the order of August 20, 2013 of the Pasquotank County Board of Elections and to allow Mr. King to run for office?
I make that as a formal motion.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous decision. Mr. King, good luck with your race.
How do you feel, Montravius?
I'm elated. I'm really elated. And
I just thank God because throughout this entire process, it has really brought me close to God. Never would I would have thought that when I ran for office, I never would have thought that it would be challenged based on my residency. I never would have thought that. I never would have thought that I would have ended up on Rachel Maddow's show on MSNBC. Talking about voter suppression in North Carolina, talking about voter suppression in Powhatan County. But through it all, I'm thankful that I went through it because I went through it for a reason. Yes. And I know that that not only is it a great day for me and a great day for Elizabeth City State University, but this is a great day for all college students.
That's right.
All college. I'm standing here on behalf of all college students.
That's right.
So I'm just thankful. I'm really happy.
Mr. King, if you could say something to Mr. Gilbert, what would that be?
What news are you with?
MSNBC, The Rachel Maddow Show.
If I could say something to Mr. Gilbert, I would say, Mr. Gilbert, since you are a resident of the 4th Ward, I hope I earn your vote.
There you go. There you go. Stay on the high ground, brother.
Hi, welcome back to the Big E University.
Welcome back to the Big E University. This last video will be on ECS students' passion to vote.
My vote counts. Does yours?
How do I feel about voting? Voting is very important. For one, it's your opinion. So if you have any complaints and you didn't vote, it's unjustified. So if you want to voice your opinion, vote. And Karate Kid over here jumping over the wall.
It's voting. I mean, you pay taxes so that you can have a vote. But as far as voting goes, I feel like it's the tip of the iceberg. It's just not enough. You need to do more than just vote, because voting doesn't inspire change. People that do work inspire change. So you can elect whoever you want on earth. If you don't get out and do more than just vote, your vote doesn't count anyways.
How you doing? I'm Tadara Burwell.
Jimmy Sherrod.
Are you registered to vote, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is this your first time voting?
Yes, sir.
How do you feel that voting will affect your generation as a whole?
I feel that voting for our country is a right that we were given, when we turn 18, why not vote? I mean, it's something that you can do for your country, and you get to choose who's our leader. And picking a leader is very important.
I'm an ECS student and I want to vote.
I'm an ECSU student and I want to vote.
I'm an ECSU student and I want to vote.
I'm an ECSU student and I want to vote.
I'm an ECSU student and I want to vote. I'm an ECSU student and I want to vote.
Despite making history, Montravius has yet to reach his biggest goal.
The major thing is graduation. And no matter how much I love my position, my number one priority right now is graduating. Because that's going to be my biggest accomplishments to date when I graduate. I'm so thankful and honored that I'm on city council. But it's not going to feel nearly as good as when I received my degree from Elizabeth City State University. This is a wonderful school, and it truly is, your place to succeed. The opportunities that I've received here at Elizabeth City State University have had an impact on my life, and it will have an impact on my life forever. The people here truly care about you. They truly, truly care about you. They want you to grow. They want you to succeed, not just academically, not just about memorizing some things in the textbook, but it's helping you become a better person, a stronger woman, a stronger man. I definitely have aspirations to go higher up, because I realize that the higher I go, the better I look for ECSU.